Thank you to Fiverr for sponsoring this video. More on them coming up. Growing up, I was taught that owning a lot of stuff was what made you rich. So it's a bit ironic that becoming a minimalist and getting rid of over 90% of my belongings is what led me down the path to true wealth. Maybe one of the reasons our society is so materialistic is because it's easier to measure wealth by counting the number of big screen TVs in your home or how many commas are in your bank account than it is in daylights, sunsets, and smiles exchanged over morning cups of coffee. As someone who spent far too many years trying to fill up the hole in her heart with stuff, I can say with confidence, the material possessions we spend so much money on don't matter as much as we think they do. Living in a house with an all-white kitchen and fancy granite countertops didn't make me any happier than one with 40-year-old unfashionable wood cabinets. Also, it turns out those tiny jars of $200 skin creams didn't moisturize my skin any better than the big tubs of Cetaphil that I buy from Costco. And owning a nice car hasn't made me any happier than I was when I used to walk or take the bus or train to get around. In fact, I quite miss those car-free days now that we live in the suburbs where you can't get anywhere without a car. Along my journey to become a minimalist, I learned a rich life is about so much more than money. It's about freedom. Not just financial freedom, but also the freedom to live a life that's rich in experiences and not just stuff. The kind of freedom that allows you to go where you want to go and do what you want to do, exactly when you want to do it. Living a minimalist lifestyle has helped me make so many positive changes in my life, which is why in today's video, I wanted to share a few of the minimalist habits that have helped me live a richer and more fulfilling life in the hopes that they might help you as well. Starting with number 1 on this list, which is that I needed to redefine wealth and what it means to me. When I was younger, my family was what you might call stuff rich, and from the outside looking in, you might have thought that we had it all. My dad was a collector who loved to buy things from coins and antiques to expensive cars. And at one point, he even had 3 Harley-Davidson motorcycles on top of all of the other cars and trucks he owned. We had a nice house with a big backyard and closets filled to the brim with clothes, toys, and all of the latest gadgets and gizmos. But it seemed like the more he got, the more he wanted, and yet, no matter how much stuff he bought, it was never enough for him. And over time, my dad just got more and more depressed, and his drinking just got worse and worse, until he ended up losing his battle with alcoholism in his early 50s. Minimalism has opened my eyes to the fact that it doesn't matter how much stuff you have in your home or how nice your house is if the people living inside of it are miserable. And it's truly amazing how much happier you are and how much money you can save and put towards things that matter when you stop spending so much on the things that don't. So if it's not about stuff, then what does a rich life mean to me? To me, it means being able to buy organic meats and plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables to make homemade meals to feed my kids, instead of the microwave dinners that I grew up with. It means living in a fantastic school district and being able to set my own schedule so that I can be there to open up the door and welcome my kids with a smile and a snack when they get home from school. Who cares if most of my wardrobe is over 10 years old or purchased secondhand from the thrift store, if it means that our family has the peace of living debt-free? Here's a gentle reminder that wealth isn't just about net worth. It's also about experiences, relationships, and peace of mind. It's about having enough to live comfortably, but not so much that the things that you own end up owning you. Another minimalist habit that's helped me build wealth is calculating my cost-to-joy ratio. Before I became a minimalist, I used to spend money without much thought or intention, beyond the number on the price tag. But nowadays, when I ask myself the question, is this purchase worth it? I'm not just talking about money. I learned the hard way that we don't just buy things with our money, but also our time and energy. Not just the time and energy we spent working to earn enough money to buy those things, but also the time and energy it takes to store and maintain them in our home. Let's say every time you go to Target, you end up blowing $10 on treats or knickknacks from the dollar spot. That $10 might not seem like a lot at the time, but if you do that every single week, that's over $500 a year. And when I think about how much more joy I would get spending that money on 3 months worth of Pizza Fridays with my kids versus buying a bunch of cheap crap that's probably going to end up as clutter in my home, that cost to joy ratio is a no-brainer. This mindset shift has not only helped me spend less and save more, but it also means that I'm much more satisfied with my purchases when I do spend money, and I'm less likely to suffer from buyer's remorse. And nowadays, instead of spending money on things like random kitchen gadgets or the latest clothing or home decor trends, I put my money towards experiences and things that truly enrich my life and free up my time and energy. And speaking of which, before we move on, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to one of my favorite minimalist hacks for living rich on a budget by introducing you to the sponsor of this week's video, Fiverr. As a minimalist who also happens to be a busy mom running a creative business from my home, Fiverr is one of my go-to hacks for saving money and helping me buy back my precious time. In case you haven't heard of it, Fiverr is the leading marketplace for digital freelance services, and their mission is to change how the world works together by providing access to first-class freelancer talent. I've been a huge fan of Fiverr for many years, and hiring Fiverr freelancers has not only helped me grow my blog and YouTube channel with services like video editing and graphic design, but it's also helped me save time and money in other ways. In fact, let me show you how I recently used Fiverr to save me around $50,000 in my new home. So my husband and I recently purchased a house that needed a few updates and renovations, which included things like getting rid of some stinky old carpets and curtains and installing nice new hardwood floors. But we were having trouble deciding what to do with the main bedroom because I also needed it to function as a home office for myself. Especially with the curtains, we weren't sure if we wanted to install them outside or inside of the frame like the previous owners had. And we all have strengths and weaknesses, right? Like when it comes to things like speed reading or competitive hot dog eating, I'm your girl. But when it comes to things like interior design, not so much. So I started shopping around for an interior designer to hire for some advice, and I ended up with major sticker shock when I saw that all the designers that I liked were charging between $25,000 to $50,000 per room. Anyway, after I woke up from my fainting spell, I went straight to Fiverr and found a US-based freelancer named Michelle who had fantastic reviews and an amazing portfolio, and she was able to take all of my likes and suggestions and create a fabulous mood board for me, as well as a complete 3D rendering of how the finished bedroom would look like from multiple angles. Not only did she totally nail our style, but she also saved me so much time and headache on shopping because I went in knowing exactly what I needed to buy to fit perfectly in our space. And instead of spending $50,000, I was able to get the exact same service for a fraction of the cost. Not a bad cost to joy ratio, am I right? If you don't know where to start, don't worry, because Fiverr has a smart search that makes it easy for you to find the right freelancer for all your projects, no matter if you're looking for website development or wanting to get personal style advice. And now you can even connect to freelancers through personalized one-on-one consultations before starting work on your project, so you can make sure that they're the right fit for you. So if you're looking to hire someone for business or personal services, head to fvrr.co/A2Zenlife to check out the services available to you and get 10% off your first order when you use the code A2Zenlife. And thanks again to Fiverr for sponsoring this week's video. Another minimalist habit that's increased my wealth is turning clutter into extra cash. Back when I first started decluttering, I had over 30 years of stuff I'd been accumulating after losing my parents, my childhood home, and a lot of other grandparents and relatives as well. And because I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, I decided to start selling that clutter as a side hustle with the goal of making $1,000 a month. And because I had so much stuff, I actually blew past that goal, and there were months where I even ended up making over $2,000 or $3,000. I know that a lot of people prefer to just trash or donate their clutter to get rid of it, but I actually found selling clutter, especially sentimental clutter, to be therapeutic. Because not only was I letting go and making a little bit of money back, but I also knew those things were moving on to a new home and a new chance to be loved. Now, after 8 years of minimalism, I usually don't have that much clutter to sell because I'm really careful about what we bring into our home, and we tend to use things up until they're either broken or worn out and not really in sellable condition. However, as I mentioned before, we recently moved into a new home, and the previous owners left behind some really interesting vintage stereo equipment when they moved out. So make sure and hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications for my channel if you want to hear an update on that in the future, because it seems like there's some pretty high-end stuff here, and it will be interesting to see how much it's worth. Next up, we have the minimalist habit of mindfully choosing to own less. Ownership is a responsibility, and that can either be good or bad. It's good if the things you own get used and add value to your life, but on the other hand, owning a lot of stuff you don't use or enjoy often ends up becoming a burden that can drag you down and waste your time, energy, and money. There's a saying in the minimalist community that goes, "Look around. All that clutter used to be money. All that money used to be time." And I've really taken that to heart when it comes to the things that I make space for now in my home. And finally, the last habit on this list is taking radical responsibility for my life. As you can probably tell, I've been through a lot of ups and downs over the past 40 years. Getting into an abusive relationship and dropping out of college, losing both my parents and my childhood home, and working 2 to 3 minimum wage jobs to survive. For a long time, I saw myself like a jellyfish who was just floating through the currents of life and going wherever they might take me. After I lost my dad when I was 23, I used to get up at 5 a.m. and walk to the cemetery so that I could visit my parents' graves every morning before school. And one day, after a particularly bad day where I was crying a lot, I stumbled upon a Rumi quote that went, "Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open?" And seeing that quote helped me realize that no one was coming to help me, and it was up to me to create a better life for myself. To me, radical responsibility means self-determination. It's the idea that I am 100% responsible for my life and the outcomes that I experience, regardless of the external factors that might come my way. And taking radical responsibility is what allowed me to finally overcome hoarding disorder and let go of 30 years of clutter, as well as work towards healing the generational trauma and addiction that runs in my family. Taking radical responsibility wasn't easy, but my life is so much better and richer because of it. And if you want to hear more about that, as well as get other tips that can help you create a better and richer life for yourself, make sure to go check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like. And thanks again to Fiverr for sponsoring this video. And don't forget to go to the link below and use the code 810life to save 10% off your first order with Fiverr.